The rain wasn't the coldest thing that night. Jason's hand on my back was. He wasn't shoving me. He was steering me like a piece of furniture delivered to the wrong address. "You understand, right?" he said, checking his vintage Rolex. "The investors will be here in 20 minutes. And frankly, Rachel, the waddling, the swollen ankles, it ruins the aesthetic." I stood on the porch of the house I kept spotless, staring at my husband. "You are a liability to the brand right now," he sighed, pressing a motel key into my hand. "Just stay there until you are no longer pregnant." Then he closed the door, the lock clicked, and just like that, I was evicted. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't bang on the door. I didn't scream through the mail slot. I looked at the heavy oak door, the one I had sanded and restrained myself last summer, and I felt nothing. No heartbreak, just a quiet, terrifying clarity. I walked to my car, the practical sedan Jason hated because it clashed with his Aston Martin, and I drove away. The rain blurred the city lights into streaks of neon, but my mind was razor sharp. This wasn't an argument. It was a termination of contract. I should have seen it sooner. Our marriage hadn't been a partnership. It had been an open house that never ended. Jason was a luxury real estate broker in a city where image wasn't everything. It was the only thing. He sold lifestyles. He sold the dream of effortless, sleek, modern perfection. And for the last 3 years, I had been the final staging piece in his most important listing, his own life. People always asked why I quit my job as an interior designer the month we got married. Jason told everyone he wanted to pamper me. He said he was old-fashioned, that he wanted to provide. But that was just the marketing copy. The truth was colder. In Jason's high-stakes circle, a wife who works is a sign that the husband isn't working hard enough. A career woman contributes to the mortgage, but a trophy wife proves the mortgage is irrelevant. I wasn't fired from my career because he wanted a homemaker. He didn't care about home-cooked meals or ironed shirts. We had staff for that. He fired me because he needed a status symbol. He needed a silent, elegant mannequin to stand next to him at galas, signaling to every potential client that he was rich enough to keep a capable woman idle. I had mistaken his control for care. I thought he wanted to protect me. Now, watching the windshield wipers slice through the downpour, I realized he just wanted to curate me. I was the mid-century modern chair in the corner, expensive, beautiful, and absolutely forbidden to have a scratch on it. But pregnancy isn't sleek. It is messy. It is swollen ankles and heartburn and a body that refuses to follow architectural blueprints. By getting pregnant, I hadn't just gained weight. I had malfunctioned. I was a prop that no longer fit the aesthetic of the room, so I was being moved to storage until I could be repaired. I pulled into the parking lot of the hotel. The neon sign buzzed overhead. The Grandview Hotel. It wasn't grand, but it was dry. I turned off the engine. I didn't cry. I didn't call my mother. I opened the glove compartment and pulled out a burner phone I had bought 3 days ago, the day I found the camera footage. I wasn't just a scorned wife. I was a liability he had vastly underestimated. And it was time to show Jason exactly what happens when the furniture starts moving itself. The room smelled like lemon pledge and stale air conditioning. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the hum of the mini-fridge. It was a standard double room, costing $89 a night. I stared at the peeling wallpaper and almost laughed. It was absurd. It was comical. Because I could have bought this hotel. I could have bought the entire chain. And Jason, the man who had just evicted me for ruining his aesthetic, didn't have a clue. He thought I was Rachel, the scholarship kid from Ohio who liked interior design and quiet evenings. He thought I was alone, dependent, and easily managed. He didn't know that my last name was actually Sterling. He didn't know that my father was Robert Sterling, the man whose investment firm owned half the skyline Jason was so desperate to sell. He didn't know that sitting in a trust fund untouched and gathering interest since I was 21 was $66 million. I hadn't kept it a secret to be deceitful. I kept it a secret because I had fallen into the trap of the good girl. Growing up, I saw how people looked at my father. They didn't see a person. They saw a bank account. They saw leverage. I wanted to be loved for the things that couldn't be itemized on a ledger. I wanted to believe that if I brought nothing to the table but my heart and my hands and someone loved me anyway, it would be real. So I wore my modesty like a badge of honor. I let Jason pay the mortgage. I let him lecture me about budgeting for groceries. I bit my tongue when he bragged about his commissions, pretending his $50,000 checks were life-changing money while I had quarterly dividends that dwarfed his annual salary. I told myself I was being noble. I told myself I was building a foundation of trust based on character, not capital. I was wrong. I wasn't building trust. I was building a cage. By making myself small, by hiding my power, I hadn't found a man who loved me for me. I had found a man who loved that I was manageable. Jason didn't love my simplicity. He loved my dependency. The good girl narrative was just golden handcuffs I had slipped onto my own wrists. I thought if I was perfect enough, quiet enough, and supportive enough, I would earn his loyalty. But you cannot earn the loyalty of a man who views people as inventory. I looked at my reflection in the dark television screen. The good girl was gone. She had been left on a porch in the rain. The woman sitting in this hotel room was done testing herself. I didn't need to prove I could survive without my inheritance anymore. I had done that. I had survived his ego, his neglect, and his cruelty. Now it was time to stop surviving and start liquidating. I reached for my bag and pulled out the laptop I had salvaged. I wasn't going to call my father crying. I wasn't going to ask for a rescue. I was going to log into the accounts I hadn't touched in 4 years. I typed in the password. The screen illuminated my face with the blue light of 8-figure balances. Jason wanted to play in the big leagues. He wanted to impress the titans of industry. Fine. He was about to meet one. And she was very, very angry. 3 days later, I was back in the house. Not physically, I wouldn't set foot in that mausoleum again without a hazmat suit, but digitally. Before leaving, I had installed a nanny cam in the nursery. It was a high-end model motion-activated with cloud storage. I had bought it hoping to watch my baby sleep. Now I was using it to watch my marriage die. I sat in the hotel room, laptop open, scrolling through the alerts. Motion detected nursery. 2:14 p.m. I clicked play. The video stream loaded. The room was soft yellow, painted just last week. The crib I had assembled myself stood in the corner. But the room wasn't empty. Jason was there, and he wasn't alone. Kimberly was with him. I knew her. She was a fitness influencer Jason sometimes hired to stage his listings, a woman whose entire personality was a curated Instagram feed of green juice and ab workouts. She was leaning against the changing table, laughing. "It's so beige," she said, trailing a manicured hand over the mobile I had hand-stitched. "Are you really going to keep this?" Jason laughed, a sound that made my stomach turn. He was pacing the room, checking his phone. "God, no. The whole room is a waste of square footage. Do you know how much a home office adds to the resale value in this zip code?" But Rachel insisted. "The baby needs a sanctuary." He mimicked my voice, making it sound shrill and demanding. "She's so nesting," Kimberly giggled. "It's kind of sad." "It's exhausting," Jason corrected. He walked over to the crib and kicked it lightly. "Look at this thing. It's huge. Where am I supposed to put my Peloton?" "Seriously, Kim, the kid isn't even here yet, and it's already taking up all the space. It's going to ruin my sleep schedule. It's going to ruin the vibe of the house. I didn't sign up for a roommate who cries and shits itself." I froze. I rewound the video. It's going to ruin the vibe. It wasn't just cruelty. It was something deeper, something twisted. Jason didn't just resent the inconvenience of a baby. He resented the baby's existence. In his world, there was only room for one star, one focal point, one person whose needs mattered. A baby wasn't a joy. It was a competitor. It was a tiny, demanding rival that would steal the attention he believed was rightfully his. He wasn't afraid of being a bad father. He was afraid of being upstaged. This was what psychologists called a narcissistic injury. The pregnancy had shifted the spotlight from him to me and eventually to the child. And he couldn't handle it. That's why he called me a liability. That's why he evicted me. Because I was no longer reflecting his glory. I was growing something that would eclipse it. I watched Kimberly pull him into a kiss right there in the middle of the nursery, disrespecting the only pure space in that entire house. But I didn't feel jealousy. I felt a cold, hard resolve clicking into place like a safety latch being removed from a weapon. He hated the baby because it threatened his ego. He hated me because I was no longer a perfect mirror. He thought he was the king of his little castle surrounded by admirers and props. He didn't realize the castle was built on sand and the tide was coming in fast. I closed the laptop. I wasn't sad anymore. I was ready. He wanted to protect his precious spotlight. Fine. I was about to turn the stage lights up so high they would burn him alive. My phone felt heavy in my hand, not with hesitation, but with the weight of the weapon I was about to fire. I dialed the number I hadn't called in 4 years. It rang once. Rachel, my father's voice was rough, surprised. Is everything okay? No, I said, my voice steady. But it's going to be. I don't need you to come get me, Dad. And I don't need a loan. I need to make a business transaction. What kind of transaction? A hostile takeover, I said. I want to buy the Summit penthouse. And I want Jason to be the broker. There was a pause on the line, heavy with unspoken questions, followed by the slow, grim realization of a man who built an empire on crushing competitors. The Summit, that's a $40 million listing. Jason doesn't handle that weight class. He will if he thinks he's being scouted by Sterling Capital. I want him to believe he's landed the whale. I want him to taste that commission. I want him to spend it in his head before he even signs the contract. And then when he's leveraged everything he has to close the deal, I want to walk into the room. Consider it done, my father said. The warmth in his voice was gone, replaced by the steel of the CEO. I'll have Marcus call him within the hour. The Trojan horse is ready. I hung up. It wasn't a conversation between a father and daughter. It was a strategy session between majority shareholders. The trap was set beautifully. Marcus, my father's CFO, made the call at 9 a.m. sharp. He played the part perfectly, the impatient, high-powered executive representing a mystery buyer who valued privacy above all else. He told Jason that the buyer wanted the Summit penthouse cash offer, no contingencies, but demanded a broker who could handle exclusive high-velocity demands. I didn't need a nanny cam to know how Jason reacted. I knew him. He would have taken the call in his home office, probably leaning back in his chair trying to sound bored while his heart hammered against his ribs. This was the deal he had spent his life chasing. $1 million commission in a single afternoon. It was his ticket to the big leagues. It was validation. And true to form, Jason let his greed do the heavy lifting. Marcus told him the buyer required a good faith gesture, exclusive access to the property for the signing stage, to specific exorbitant standards paid for upfront by the broker to demonstrate commitment to the luxury standard. It was a test, Marcus said. A test of liquidity and class. Jason didn't have the liquidity. But he had the ego. I watched the movement on our joint accounts, the ones he thought I was too stupid to monitor. He drained the savings. He maxed out the business line of credit. He even took a high-interest short-term loan against the equity of the firm he worked for, likely forging a signature or two, convinced that the commission check would clear in 48 hours and cover the crater he was digging. He spent nearly $80,000 in 24 hours booking florists, caterers, and renting high-end art to stage a penthouse that didn't need staging. He was leveraging assets he didn't have to impress a client who didn't exist. He wasn't just buying flowers, he was buying his own hype. He thought he was investing in his future. He didn't realize he was financing his own execution. He called me that night, his voice dripping with false magnanimity. Rachel, he said, sounding breathless. I've got huge news. Massive. When this deal closes tomorrow, we're going to have a serious talk about your attitude. I'm about to become the biggest name in this city. You might want to rethink that hotel stay. I'm rethinking everything, Jason, I said. Good luck with the closing. Luck is for losers, he scoffed. I hung up and checked my reflection in the mirror. He was right. It did take skill to destroy a man without ever touching him. And tomorrow, I was going to give him a masterclass. The boardroom of the Summit Tower felt less like a meeting space and more like a predator's observation deck. Floor-to-ceiling glass offered a panoramic view of the city Jason believed he now owned. He was sitting at the head of the mahogany table, spinning a fountain pen between his fingers. Kimberly was there too, ostensibly as his staging consultant, though she was currently taking selfies against the skyline, checking her angles in the reflection of the window. Stop fidgeting, Kim, Jason snapped, though he was smiling. This is the big leagues. Act like you've been here before. I'm just excited, she pouted, sliding into the chair next to him. $40 million. That commission is going to buy us a lot of green juice. It's going to buy us a legacy, he corrected. He checked his watch. They're late. Typical power move. Make the broker sweat. He laughed, leaning back, putting his feet up on the edge of the $3,000 chair. Let them play their games. I've got the staging perfect. I fronted the costs. I proved I'm the only one in this city with the liquidity to handle a deal this size. Once they sign, I'm untouchable. The double doors opened. Jason swung his legs down, straightening his tie. Marcus walked in. He was a man who looked like he was carved out of granite, gray suit, gray hair, gray expression. He didn't look at Jason. He didn't look at Kimberly. He placed a single file folder on the table. "Mr. Sterling," Jason said, standing up, extending a hand. "Pleasure. As you can see, the unit is pristine. We're ready to execute." Marcus didn't shake his hand. "I am not Mr. Sterling," he said, his voice flat. "I am the CFO. Mr. Sterling does not attend residential closings. However, the principal owner of the holding company insisted on being here personally to review the final contingencies." Jason blinked his smile, faltering for a microsecond. "The owner? Of the building?" "Of the company buying it," Marcus corrected. "And the company that owns the brokerage you work for?" Jason frowned. "I don't. My agency is independent." "Your agency was acquired this morning," Marcus said, checking his phone. "Hostile takeover. It was quite efficient." He turned toward the doors. "Madam Vice President, we are ready for you." The doors swung open again. The woman who walked in wasn't waddling. She wasn't swollen. She was gliding. She wore a tailored black power suit that accommodated her pregnancy not as a burden but as a fact of nature. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. She didn't look at the view. She looked directly at the head of the table. Jason's face went slack. It wasn't just shock. It was a malfunction. He looked from Marcus to the woman, his brain failing to bridge the gap between the weeping wife he'd evicted and the titan standing before him. "Rachel," he whispered. The word sounded ridiculous in the silence of the room. "Sit down, Jason," I said. My voice wasn't shrill. It wasn't the voice of the woman who asked permission to buy organic milk. It was the voice of the majority shareholder. What are you doing here?" He looked frantically at Kimberly, who had frozen mid-selfie. "This is a private closing. You can't be here." "I told you you're a liability." "I'm not a liability," I interrupted, walking to the head of the table. "I'm the vice president of Sterling Capital. And I'm the one buying this penthouse." I reached into the folder Marcus had laid down. I didn't pull out a real estate contract. I pulled out a thick stack of documents stapled with blue legal paper. "You wanted to impress the client, Jason. You wanted to show you had skin in the game." I slid the papers across the mahogany. They stopped exactly at the edge of the table right in front of him. "Congratulations, you have our attention." He stared at the papers. "That," I said, pointing to the top document, "is a summary of the $80,000 you embezzled from your firm's escrow account to pay for the staging of this unit. Fraud, Jason. It's a felony." His face drained of color. I was going to put it back. Once the commission cleared." "There is no commission," I said. "Because there is no deal. Sterling Capital isn't buying this unit from you. We already own the building. We just acquired the debt on your agency, which means we now own the audit trail of every illegal loan you took out in the last 48 hours. I motioned to Marcus. "Show him the rest." Marcus stepped forward. "We have also notified the licensing board. Your broker's license has been suspended pending investigation. And the short-term loan you secured against your personal assets, that was through a subsidiary of ours." Immediately, Jason stood up his chair, scraping violently against the floor. "Rachel, stop. Stop this. I did this for us. I wanted to be big for us. You can't destroy me because I was ambitious." "I'm not destroying you because you were ambitious," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "I'm evicting you because you were cruel." I placed the second document on the table. "Divorce papers. You called our child a liability. You called me furniture. You brought her," I gestured to Kimberly, who was now shrinking into her chair, into our nursery. "You treated your life like a showroom and your family like props. Well, the lease is up." I leaned over the table, getting close enough that he could see the clarity in my eyes. "You aren't a broker anymore, Jason. You aren't a husband. You are a bad investment. And I am liquidating." "You can't do this," he stammered, looking around the room as if an audience might save him. "I'm Jason Miller. I'm a brand." "You're a tenant," I corrected, "and you have 24 hours to vacate my property. All of it." I turned to Marcus. "Have security escort them out. And Marcus, have the nursery repainted. The vibe in there is terrible." I turned and walked out of the boardroom without looking back. I didn't need to see the ruin. I had already seen the blueprints. The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely public. In the world of high-stakes real estate, reputation is currency, and Jason had just filed for bankruptcy. By the time he reached the lobby of the Summit Tower, his agency had already drafted his termination letter. Gross misconduct, attempted fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. The labels stuck to him like tar. The brand of Jason Miller wasn't just damaged, it was liquidated. I heard he tried to spin it for a few weeks. He told people he was going independent, that he was pivoting to consulting, but the city knew, the developers knew, and without the access, without the credit lines, without the showroom wife to anchor his image, he simply faded. He lost the Aston Martin, he lost the condo. Kimberly moved on to a personal trainer with a larger following before the first credit card bill bounced. Jason was left with exactly what he had brought to the table, an empty suit and an ego that couldn't pay the rent. 6 months later, my life looks very different. I am sitting on the floor of my living room. It isn't a penthouse, it's a sprawling older house, with creaky floorboards and a garden that needs weeding. There is a pile of laundry on the sofa. There are brightly colored blocks scattered across the rug. It isn't sleek. It isn't beige. It is messy, chaotic, and vibrant. And it is mine. I look down at the baby in my arms. Leo. He is drooling on my silk blouse, and I don't care. I don't worry about the aesthetic. I don't worry about the vibe. I worry about the quarterly reports for the Sterling Foundation, which I am now running, and I worry about whether Leo is warm enough. My father comes over on Sundays. He doesn't talk about business much anymore. He sits on the floor and builds block towers, trying to make his grandson laugh. He told me once that he regretted teaching me to be quiet. He said he should have taught me to roar. I told him I didn't need to roar. I just needed to stop whispering. I often think about the woman who sat in that hotel room, terrified and pregnant, calculating her worth based on how well she could hide her power. I want to tell her that the good girl trophy she was polishing was actually a participation award for her own erasure. I want to tell her that love isn't about fitting into someone else's blueprint. I realized something during the eviction of my husband. There is a difference between net worth and self-worth. My net worth was always high, hidden in trust funds and portfolios. But my self-worth had been in the negatives because I believed that being low maintenance was a virtue. It isn't. It is an invitation for people like Jason to treat you like a fixture. I am not low maintenance anymore. I am high standards. I don't shrink to fit the room. I buy the building. And if anyone ever tells me again that I am taking up too much space or that my reality is ruining their aesthetic, I won't apologize. I will show them the door. Sometimes the people who claim to love us are just loving the space we take up in their showroom. Share this story if you've ever had to reclaim your own worth. You are not furniture,